Hello my lovely friends, and welcome to another video sharing a day out with me, Isabel. I did try to do this as a video log, but when I watched it back it was pretty shocking. So I've got some videos and I'm going to try and overlay some commentary, some audio, so we're going to see how this goes. Apologies if it doesn't quite work right, but I do hope you'll enjoy exploring with me. So the video today that I've created and the outing was on the 20th of September, so this was on Friday. I was at a bit of a loose end and decided that rather than sit at home and stare at my computer for no reason, I'd take myself off for a walk. So I found myself a walk that I've actually been wanting to do for quite a while, that I didn't think the rest of my family would be bothered by. And so off we trotted, and I ended up heading to an area of the UK in East Cheshire called Alderley Edge. So as a child, my dad read to me a book called The Weird Stone at Brisingamen and some of the other prequel and sequel books that were written by the author Alan Garner, and I have recently re-listened to those on audiobooks. And these books came out of a legend in the area of Alderley Edge. So there is a legend that a farmer passing through the area with his white horse met a wizard. The wizard asked to have his white horse, that he needed it for a purpose, and offered him a payment. He took the gentleman through the land to an area where he struck the rock, and out the rock cleft in two, and behind the rock they came to a passage guarded by some iron gates. Down the passage and into the earth, where there was a cavern full of sleeping men waiting for the time when they were needed to be the army for the safety of England. Now, and they needed the white horse because one didn't have a white horse. So that's a very poor rendering of the story. On the screen at the moment you should hopefully see a poem I found as well. But ultimately this story was the inspiration for the stories that Alan Garner wrote, are based around the area that he lived, that he knew in Alderley and Alderley Edge and that area of East Cheshire. So it's about an hour from me, so it's easy to get to. So I decided I would go and do a wander, follow a walk, which I found in a book which I will post down below, but the book was called Walks in Mysterious Cheshire and Wirral, and find some of the landmarks that were used to illustrate the story or in the story. So we're going to go on this walk together and you're going to join me. So let's see what we find. So this is Gizmo. Gizmo is the family dog, and he was coming with me on the outing for the day. So he wasn't very impressed with some of the outing, but we headed off. We parked in a National Trust car park where there were these wonderful information boards. So this talks better about the legends. So if you want to pause it to read, I'll also put a couple of websites below. Perhaps that might help as well. Apologies for the reflection and glare. The area is absolutely full of prehistoric, megalithic, I'm going to use the wrong words, Bronze Age mines, copper mines. So there's loads of history in the area as well. The land is potted with lots of mines and caverns, so it's a really important place. The walk was going to be about 3 miles, and we started off on this beautiful day. The sun was shining. It was mild. It's really been a beautiful week considering it's September. We walked through the woods. We found this area which is where some of the remnants of the mining can be seen. Walked up to a specific piece of mining called the Engine Vein. So through the trees here, some of this is also called Thief's Hollow, but I can't remember which little bit, and that's referenced in at least one of Alan Garner's books. The Engine Vein isn't referenced, but it's believed that this is one of the caves and caverns that is referenced within the books in terms of where some of the characters come out. So the books tell a story of two children who get involved with a wizard and a dwarf and other characters. There's talk of the wells, there's talk of the Iron Gates, there's talk of all these things within the stories, and it's really worth having a look. And they're great little fantasy stories. They're not long, they're not a difficult read, and as I say, the mines were kind of the entrance to the land where, and there's a description. So this is the engine vein. This used to be, you can actually go on specific outing days. They have this open in the bank holidays, so you can go and visit. But I've not visited there. You cannot get down there at this time. It's fenced off because it's not secure, so you need like hard hats and stuff to go in, but lots of people do caving down there with permission, and you can get right into some of the caverns and stretches. This is some of the beautiful glorious Cheshire countryside and some of the lovely animals nearby, some of the cows. This is then on the walk the Golden Stone. So this gold stone is ancient. They believe it was a millstone or a waymarker. It is referenced in at least one of Alan Garner's books. It doesn't look like much, but it has been there in situ for many years as a waymarker and a boundary marker between different lands and different worlds as well. So it's quite important in one of the books. From here you walk up along and onto the ridge itself. This driveway is created by the landowners, the Stanleys, as a way for people to come and visit and enjoy the views. You can see right out over Cheshire. At the time, when Alan Garner was young, and certainly when the books were written, there wasn't the same forestation there is now. A lot of this was actually created to enhance the landscape, and so there was a period of time where this was much more like a moorland, so it didn't have the trees, but the trees were very peaceful. There were lots of birds, there were lots of people walking, which is why I wasn't able to say what I kind of liked, because I felt a bit uncomfortable, but we pootled along. We had a look at the view as we were going. So this is looking out over East Cheshire into the Peak District. So I just kind of filmed some of this walking and in through the woods. It was really beautiful. It was a nice day. It wasn't too sunny, but it was mild, and actually, to be honest, by the time I'd scrabbled around, which I'll tell you about later, I actually got quite warm. If any of you in the UK and are visiting, by the way, there isn't a decent car park and some laybys, and it's very near the Alderley Edge itself, where there's a train station, so it's quite accessible really. But the walk itself isn't overly in places, so some of it has decent pathing, but in other places it's a bit more scrabbly, so you'd have to look up yourself to see what your capabilities were. It does go up. Here I've come to an area called Stormy Point. So this is again referenced in the books. It's a much more open area. The area is sandstone. There's a lot of sandstone in this area. There's a whole ridge in Cheshire called the Sandstone Ridge. You can see here in that crack, in a minute you'll see on the video, is a thing called the Devil's Grave, which is a cave under the overhang which people used to use. But again, you can see right out across the Peak District, in the distance across so we're looking out to the east of England at the moment. It's a really big wide open area. It is eroding a little bit, so some of it they kind of fenced off. I didn't go down. I believe there's a cave actually underneath. I only realized afterwards, but I hadn't gone down to that lower level to see that. But this is also talked about in the book. It's a kind of lookout point, it's a meeting point, and it's a point where in the stories they had to be careful, because obviously it's very open space. They're very visible in this area. So yeah, as I say, the whole area is pockmarked with caves and other areas. So shortly I walk up over to show. Here we go. This is what's known as the Devil's Grave. There is a cave under there. Gizmo's head. I decided not to drop down as the crevice. You can get down, but I didn't really want to clamber down with the dog, and I had a rucksack on my back, so I didn't really want to get stuck. But we carried on exploring. We then took the path along here. Now this stretch of sandstone rocks that Gizmo's busy demonstrating, this is one of the locations that could be where the wizard cleft the rock and the iron gates appeared. There's not 100% sure where they are, and there may be well be more than one location reference, but this is certainly one of them. These are really unusual because these stick out a mile on this particular stretch of path. And this path drops down the hill and then up to an area called Saddle Bowl. Again, another reference within some of the books. So I did trot down here a little bit. There wasn't a lot to see, and I decided not to go the full way along at this point in time. But again, some really lovely formations as well in the ground, in the trees. You can see the roots here over the sandstone. At this point Gizmo was happy because we were on a nice path. A bit later on he was a bit more miserable when I lost the path. So we then dropped down and we were going to go and try and find the wells. And I thought that this was the well that I was looking for. Turns out it wasn't. This was just some more sandstone caving. I'd actually gone on the wrong path. I found myself on the side of a hill overlooking a valley, thinking I was supposed to be going down the hill there to the path. I came across this abandoned piece of mining, which obviously is one of the entrance to the bronze or the copper mines, with rails, which was really rather spooky as I was the only person there because I was not on the correct path. So the dog and I ended up trying to find our way back. I did some very clever map reading, thought I'd got it right, got down to the bottom of the hill, realised that there wasn't a way through to where I needed to be. So we had to climb all the way back up again, under a tree, over a tree, ended up where we started, quite near the original sandstone rocks. But if I hadn't have done that, I wouldn't have found this amazing little bit of history hidden in the trees, which was quite cool. So we did have a little bit of a diversion here because I'd messed up, and it's very wooded and very overgrown here, but ultimately I did eventually find my way onto the correct path and found the Okay, so at this point I've found myself back up from the trees and I found the first of the wells. So this well is the here now is the second well, which is the wishing well, the holy well. There's two with different names and they're a little bit as uncertain. This has a beautiful trough carved out of a single piece of sandstone. There's something about putting rhododendron leaves in the spout that I read about just before, but it's really peaceful. Now this is another possible location for some of the iron gates. This was me having faff with the camera, apologies, but there we go. I should have cut that out and didn't get that far. So yeah, so then we carried on walking through the woods. It was really beautiful here. I was glad I'd found the correct path. And we found our way to this is another rock. This is Castle Rock, so a bit like Stormy Point. This is a high open point. It's believed that in some of the prehistoric eras like Bronze Age, they might have used this as a hunting area, so they'd chase the animals off the edge. So in a minute, just be aware if you don't like looking down drops or heights, I do go closer to the edge. I don't go that close though, but it is quite a steep drop down off the top. You can see it's such a beautiful area, and again we're looking to the east. I actually stopped here and had a bite to eat before I headed on to find the Wizard's Well, which is coming next. And this is the Wizard's Well, and this is really important, called the Wizard's Well for the very reason that above it has a carving, and you can see the face of a man, I think at the top under the two little sprigs of green. You can see like the eyes and the nose, and underneath it says, "Drink of this and take thy fill, for the water falls by the Wizard's will." And they sort of tell you to trace the letters. So drink of this and take thy fill, for the water falls by the Wizard's will. And yeah, it's kind of, this is a bit of a legendary spot really. They're not really sure when that was done, but this is known as the Wizard's Well. And then we headed back. Now this is the highest point. This is the Armada beacon. It was a beacon because at the time the trees weren't there. So at the time of the Spanish Armada, they have actually since found that it actually is on a bronze burial mound. So this is a mound, so it's recognised as a Bronze Age burial mound. They don't think they've done any excavations, but there are some records. And all under this area, it's absolutely full of ancient tunnels snaking away into the darkness. Galleries, shafts, levels, and in the Garner's books, they describe some of the walks they do that go underground. So it's really cool just to think about the underworld, and yeah, and just think about kind of, you know, what was and what was there, and imagine the wizards and the elves and the dwarves and any of those characters that might be in those books. This was just looking at the book as I was on the beacon and looking at what was, and I'm, you know, thinking about the area around before I moved on. And then I finished the day walking off through the woods, heading back. I did miss the Druid Circle, which is a stone circle, but it's a modern day thing, only maybe 100 years old, and again it was put there by the landowners as a little bit of a folly, so it doesn't have that kind of sense with it. But by that point the dog and I were very hot, very tired, and ready for a sit down, and we actually found our way. There's a tea rooms called the Wizard Tea Rooms where you can sit. So you sit outside in the sun and you grab a very nice cup of coffee and a very nice piece of cake to end the day. So we headed back off through the trees, through the peaceful woods, just enjoying the nature really, and enjoying where I was. And I was just so glad to have found the area and found where I wanted to be. And I hope that you've enjoyed coming with me. At the end I did myself a little tarot reading, which was really cool as well. I look forward to seeing you on the next one, but in the meantime, enjoy and see you soon. Bye.